All right, this meeting is being recorded. Welcome, everybody. We are so delighted that Instructional Design and Learning Special Interest Group is delighted today to present a wonderful webinar with the fabulous Mr. John Hedtke. Today we're going to learn what he would have liked to have known when he started out. I want to give a quick commercial for John. He is the award-winning author of 27 books with several already in the works for the rest of us next time. John owns Double Tall Consulting, which is a company that offers writing and business consulting. I want to let everybody know that I got a chance to preview these slides, and there's some really good stuff coming our way. And this is no baloney from John. He not only talks the talk, but he also walks the walk. If you know him, you know that he is generous and that he is smart and he is funny, and we are just delighted to have him as our speaker today. So everybody, welcome John. I want to point out before we start the webinar, you can actually applaud. If you look at the little man in your toolbar at the top, there's a little man with his hand up, and you can give him applause.
Oh my
with
goodness.
One of the buttons there. We can laugh. Yep, there you go. Lucky found the button. We can laugh. We can tell him to speak louder. We can ask that he speaks louder. We can ask that he speeds up or slows down. So everybody, even though most of us don't have the ability to talk to John, we can definitely communicate through the chat window. We can also communicate with those little status changes. So without further ado, I would love to welcome Mr. John Hedtke.
Thank you. I'm blushing. That was very nice. Thank you. Let's see. Early stuff. I will try to notice questions, but I cannot see all of the attendees lists simultaneously and at the same time. So if I don't know, if you've got your hand up and I don't notice it, probably ping me in the chat window or something, and we'll try and get there. But I will be answering questions at the end of it anyway. So if you feel comfortable hanging on, hang on, and we can get there. Gosh, I think that's probably about it. I've had a whole pot of coffee and I'm ready to go. So this is a presentation called What I Would Have Liked to Know When I Started Out. And this came about, just as a bit of background, in 2013 when the esteemed Leah Gurn was the guest editor for Intercom, and she asked me to write this article, and I ended up writing a draft with about 10 things in it, and then I kind of bounced it off of her, and she said, no, I'd like more of this format. And I ended up working with somebody who was a writer that I worked with at that company at that time, who's a kind of young in the biz, and so she kept saying, well, what about this? You've mentioned that, and so we started filling it in, and it changed completely ultimately, and almost doubled in size as well. So I did this as a presentation for the Portland, Oregon chapter, and I like this. This feels like the wisdom of the the distilled wisdom of the ancients, hand distilled by me. So onward. First things first. Oops. First things first. You're getting the mouse over the darn button. There we go. First things first. What we're going to talk about. When I started out, I had no training. I mean, no training as a technical communicator. My first job as a technical writer was in 1982, when I was actually still a developer. And then my first official job as a technical writer, which is what it said on my business cards, was in 1984. And that was way back when, in the days when men were men and women were women and cars were cars and 640K and dual floppy disk drives were good enough for anybody. And I was really smart, and I learned some things fast, and I did pretty well, and I've generally had a great time in this job, but there was a ton I didn't know that I really wish that I had known at the time in all kinds of venues. being a good technical communicator is a lot more than knowing how to write a good sentence and use a word processor. And so I would have benefited strongly from someone sitting me down and say, here are things you should know, and they'll save you time, money, and pain if you learn them now. And so I'm going to give you a summary of the things that I have learned that I wish I'd known at the time. And I am going to pass all of this stuff on to you. All of these things are true. And I guarantee you that all of these things apply to you personally, right where you're sitting now. I'm going to be doing this in 4 groups, and they're going to address different aspects of your life and your career. Who are you? Career development, people skills, and then what I call the really important stuff. So, who are you? These are the things that are important for knowing yourself and growing as a person. There we go. Scrolling. Oh, darn it. Mouse got off. There we are. First, figure out what you want. Something that I'm fond of quoting in any number of my books when I'm talking about project planning and project management actually has a much broader range, and that is a thing that I have dubbed Mageed's Law, and it is named after Paul Mageed, who is one of the Flying Karamazov brothers, who I know. And he said this 35 years ago in their Broadway show, and that is this: it doesn't matter how you get there if you don't know where you're going. Everybody write that down. You need to figure out what you want, because if you don't know, you're going to end up thrashing. It'll be like a speed limit or a detour sign on life, where you get on the highway of life, you're driving by and it says detour, lose 20 years. I know. So first things first, talk to a life coach or a mentor or a therapist, because knowing yourself lets you grow into the person that you want to become and not into somebody else's idea of what you should become. You don't want to become another stuffed shirt just because you have some stuffed shirt giving you advice. Do the homework to identify what you want with a life coach or a mentor or a therapist, and work with them and figure out what do you really want. Because if you're, there is probably no greater tragedy in life than to spend all of your life leading somebody else's life and not doing the things that you actually wanted. As part of this, figure out what matters to you in a job. And I am not talking about the big, profound things, like, do you want to be a technical communicator? Do you want to do this? No, I'm actually talking about the little tiny things. And here are some examples, and there may be smirking going on, but I promise this is actually the really important stuff for a lot of it. Are you a morning or a night person? Do you mind a long commute? Do you want to pay for your own parking? Are you willing to work extra hours or odd schedules? Do you need good coffee there? As you can see from the logo for Double Tall Consulting, good coffee, vitally important.
Yeah.
Is the ability to telecommute important? And all of these things are going to sound rather trivial, but as you're going to stop smirking as soon as you start adding some of these up and go, yeah, I really hate commuting. It's like if I have to do another 45-minute commute, I am going to scream. But when you start adding up these things and things like them, you're going to discover that your little personal preferences will actually make some of the biggest differences when it comes to measuring your job satisfaction. Also, figure out if you prefer working captive or freelance. You can do either or both, actually. Each has advantages, but people who like freelancing aren't usually as comfortable with captivity and vice versa. I tend to lean towards freelancing, but I have certainly done plenty of captive work. And there, as I say, there are advantages to it that cannot be had as a freelancer. If you're doing one or the other because you think you should, you'll only make yourself unhappy. Now, and going back to the idea of like, what do you want? When you start hearing the word should in your internal dialogue. Look at it closely. In fact, there may be a valid reason for the should, but if you're just trying to beat yourself into submission with somebody else's script, that's where the shoulds are going to come in that you should get rid of. Try working both ways. Try working captive, try working freelance, see how each feels, go with what you like, and there is no reason, as I say, you can't do both. Next, if you like something, do it. God, that sounds simple, doesn't it? You know, that old saw about do what you love and the money will follow. This is true. Now, even if you're not making as much money as you might if you did something else, you're doing what you love. And in some cases, working for the money will be something that you really don't want to do. And I can give you a personal example. I gave up being a programmer, a COBOL programmer, in 1984, and I was damn good at it. I really was. I had a chance to do like 2-3 hours of COBOL coding in 1987 when I was on a writing gig, and they used stuff, and I was able to identify a couple of things at that point. Even 3 years out, my skills had not dimmed enough. I could code rings around their system programmer, and that the other thing was, 2 hours of COBOL coding every 3 years was more than enough. So I was quite validated. But if I had dusted off my COBOL skills in 1998, for the Y2K stuff, I could have been charging $100, $150 an hour. And even today, if I wanted to do the same thing, working on legacy systems and either updating them or overhauling them or doing heaven knows what in COBOL, I could still be making $100, $150 an hour, which is, admittedly not the same value of $150 an hour 20 years ago. But even so, that's not chopped liver. That's a ton of money. And you know something? I am not interested in doing that, even for more money than I'm making now. And I think it would be fair to say that I would probably rather shove hot tar up my nose than be a COBOL programmer again, even for the money. What I'm doing right now is a lot more satisfying, and that's more important than the money. In the course of doing things, take some risks. Never be afraid to take at least some risks. If you've never tried something that sounds interesting, do it. You may love it, you may hate it, but you'll know. For example, I became an author because there was a book that I really wanted to write, and it sounded exciting. I had gotten some advice from somebody who although personally he was a real jackass, nonetheless, he did give me some very good career advice, and that was that I should go out and publish a book. And so I did. And so you can look at tradebookauthor.com if you want to find out about trying this for yourself. That is a temporarily dusty but soon to be reactivated blog that I do for people who want to become authors of nonfiction, and to an extent fiction as well. I've got some of the stuff crosses over. It's called Hey Kids, Become an Author at Home in Your Spare Time and Earn Big Bucks. And if you scroll to the very bottom of the thing, go to the earliest one and reach your way up, navigation sucks. I'm having my entire website and everything overhauled right now. You will find out a ton about becoming an author. You too can do this. It's not bad. And I have published 27 books, and which sounds cool. And I am now capable of committing the perfect crime because I no longer have any fingerprints. But the money I've made off my books, I really haven't. None of them have paid off directly, but indirectly they have paid off. For example, I had a recent contract from 2011 to 2014. Where I was doing disaster recovery consulting, and that was the direct result of my next to last book on disaster preparedness. And although I only made about $2,500 directly on that book from the royalty advance because it never sold out, I was able to wave this around at the end of the interview, for this job, saying not only do I have all of these credits as a technical writer and so forth, but here, plop, I have written this book on disaster preparedness. Let me give you an autographed copy. And people just get all squishy when you do that. And so I got the gig, and I made 175 grand off of that. And that's not chopped liver. All of this was indirectly from taking that risk years ago to write my first book. And finally, in the course of this, don't be afraid to fail. Hand in glove, you're out there on the ledge, you don't have a net probably, there is the chance of failure. A person who has never failed or has never gotten fired is probably not stretching themselves enough. All right, next category, career development. These are the things that are important for getting the most out of the jobs you have. First, network, Kelsey Priest. Be very active in the SDC at all levels. Again, Kelsey Priest. The SDC has done wonders for me. I have made lifelong friends. I have had some really epic times. And this is an important statement, I have made $1 million that I would not have made otherwise by being a member of the STC. It's all from participating in the SDC at local and society levels. And I recommend to everyone here that you do everything. You attend chapter meetings and events, that you volunteer to do things locally, you run for local office, definitely attend the annual conferences as much as you can, and even consider running for society level office or volunteering for a committee. But you should also consider joining at least one other professional organization. And I know this may be right on the verge of blasphemy, but it's true. As cool as the STC is, it is not the only professional organization for technical communicators out there. Consider joining a second organization and participate in that too. There are half a dozen well-known organizations for technical communicators of various stripes available here in the US, and there are hundreds, I mean hundreds, of other professional organizations for absolutely every specific interest of writing and communication you can think of. You can try Googling professional organization or professional association and romp around the net for a while, and I suggest everybody do this just to appreciate the wealth of opportunity out there. Go to the public library, go to the reference desk, ask the reference library for the Directory of Associations, which is going to be a colossal book. That'll keep you occupied for an afternoon. I would also suggest that you look at professional organizations that are not specifically related to technical communication, like the Rotary or the local Chamber of Commerce, which will give you a good cross-section of business, and it will expose you to other people and businesses than the ones you might get to in a more focused group. Moreover, if you're the only technical communicator in a group, and you go off, say, and do a presentation on the basics of TC and what a tech writer can do for you, or why you need good documentation or something, and you don't have any other technical writers there, all of these people will look at you and go, I've been thinking about doing something like that. Why don't you come give me a bid? And you go, oh my, yes, of course. Getting exposure. Cool. You work because you're getting paid. Never forget, you are working somewhere, almost always, because of the money you are being paid. Harlan Ellison wrote an intro to a short story about 45 years ago. And he'd written, and he said that in this intro, he didn't like the story, and he didn't like the resolution of the story, and he hated the magazine he sold it to, and distaste all through this. And he says at the end of it, but he made 3 times as much money for the doing of it versus any other combination. After that, he wrote one of the greatest single sentence paragraphs ever. He said, quote, "Moral of the story, I may prostitute my art, but at least I am not a cheap whore." We are not creating great art. And for a lot of people who come into technical communication from English lit backgrounds, and I've even hired some of them, this is just like anathema, but it's true. We are not creating great art. There is nothing great art about what any of us do inevitably. We are hacks. We do this for the money. We may be really good hacks, but we write what they tell us to because they're paying for it. And when they stop paying us for it, we go elsewhere and do it for someone else. Now, you can enjoy your job an awful lot. You can be very professional. You can put the 25 coats of Shiver Tone spray lacquer on this thing and make it glow in the dark. But remember that what we're doing is something we are doing for the money. If we didn't get paid, there are very, very, very few of us who would stick around and do whatever it is we're doing during the days for free. I sure wouldn't. I can do a lot of other things for free, writing or no. And I bet that all of you would be doing the same. Now, if the pay is low, you need to consider the intangibles. When someone asks you to do a job for less than the going rate, consider if you will benefit from the experience. If you haven't much experience or you're completely new to a field, you may be willing to work for less money, and there may even be a measure of prestige involved. Volunteering for things, again, as they say, volunteering for things can be a great way of gaining visibility to your peers. And as you get further along, you will often volunteer your time and efforts to pay back to the profession, and that is a very good reason to do this too. But don't sign up for a long-term assignment at a cheap rate just because you don't have the experience. At least build in the idea of getting more money as soon as you've proved yourself. Real soon, like a month or two. Also, watch out if someone justifies being cheap by saying it'll be good exposure for you. If someone offers you a cut rate and says it'll be good exposure for you, they're being cheap and they're hoping you're too dumb to notice. My response inevitably tends to be, people die of exposure. And anybody that brings up this line is probably going to be a problem in other ways, so negotiate hard with them and don't be afraid to walk away. And here's a war story to illustrate all of this. Early in my career, I was at my first tech pubs manager job in 1988. So I had my first annual salary review, and I got a 7% raise for my performance, and that was cool. And then my boss offered me a second job to go along with the first, which was product manager for training. And that was at no extra money. And so I said, I still remember this distinctly, I said, so I could do one job for the money I'm getting, or I could 2 jobs for the money I'm getting. No, I think I'll stick with the 1 job, thanks. And he was honestly surprised. He was just such a weasel. And he said, but what about the exposure? And this is exactly what I said to him. This is my boss. I didn't care. I said, I have published 3 books so far in 1989. Excuse me. I published 3 books so far. I'm head of the Puget Sound Freelancers Association. I'm known throughout the area as a leading technical writer, and I've won half a dozen awards so far. I've got exposure coming out my ass. Give me the money. And he blinked. He was like completely surprised that I would, it's like that I guess I wasn't going to fall for this. So he said, well, I'll have to talk to the president of the company, and it was, and I felt like, wait a minute, I've been wasting my time here like you're some goddamn used car salesman or something like that. You can't make a deal without approving with the boss. So he goes and he talks to the president, and the next day he comes back and they coughed up another 7% raise for me to take the additional job. And at that point I did. But kind of on the flip side, sometimes you just have to do what's available. And there is no question about it, some jobs suck. Even a lot of jobs can suck. Not every job that we do is going to be noble or fun or good work or anything. More jobs are going to be like being in Dilbert than being in a good place. And the problem is sometimes you have to take an awful job because it's the only job out there. I've had more than a few, and they're unpleasant, but they're what's available. And, as long as they're checks cash, you're probably doing okay. So be professional in cases like that, but always keep looking. Keep your ears open for something better. Freelancers, take note. Nobody ever hires a contractor because they're having a nice day and they want to share it. Clients who hire you are hiring you to solve a problem. And the problem usually has an underlying cause that can occasionally be very, very unpleasant. So grit your teeth, keep your perspective, and remember that the client is not hiring you to be their therapist and probably wouldn't want you to solve their underlying problems even so. You're hired to do a job with a specific scope and purpose. Do it as best you can and be ready to go elsewhere when a better job appears. Jerry Weinberg, one of my favorite authors in this general field, in his classic book, The Secrets of Consulting, which I recommend to absolutely everybody, regardless of the nature of your work, wrote about a consultant he knew, and she told him that that she had a, at the end of a contract, she always had this kind of closing out fantasy of hers, where she was dressed up like the Lone Ranger, and she was on this incredible silver horse, and she reared the horse, in the sunset was silhouetted on it, and that all of the people in the town, at the old company were kind of looking up and thinking and saying, who was that masked woman anyway? And she said that it always made her feel good, but she was also careful to remember that this was her fantasy, not theirs. Always, in kind of along a line like that, always be looking for your next job. Start looking for your next job the day you start your current job, by which I mean you need to start thinking, well, this job looks good, and I might even be here for 5 years, but it's like, what am I going to do after this? What am I likely to get out of this, and so forth. And this will certainly change as the job goes along. You need to understand the basics of TechCom, of course, and have a good grounding in fundamentals, but after that you can start branching out. Now, you should not leap out the door at a moment's notice, but be open to the possibilities. And as I say, think about what you'd like to do next. If you are a writer, consider being a trainer, or a project lead, or a TechPubs manager, or a business analyst, or a usability specialist, or dozens of other things. Your skill set as a technical communicator is 95% of the skills for most other writing, analysis, and consulting jobs. And the only difference is how you package those skills. There really is an almost complete overlap between being a technical communicator, being a consultant, being a business analyst, and lots and lots of other things. And as one additional note, cultivate agencies and recruiters. I have known some recruiters for over 30 years, and so I can always phone them up and say, have you got a job for me, or have you got a job for somebody else I know who I'm trying to help out. Now, all of this might be fairly standard. Here's something I'll bet you haven't heard, and that is keep a day log. This is rather like a job diary. Day logs are really, really private. Don't even volunteer that you're doing this to anybody. Write the things that happen and what you do. And most importantly, write down how you feel about things that happen. When you start this, you're going to write things about how you were at the Thursday afternoon product management staff meeting, and that at some point when somebody got up to speak, you noticed that you were feeling really tense or distrustful, and you couldn't identify why. Just write it down just like that. It doesn't have to be formal or polished. It's better if it isn't. And you can write that down, and then maybe the next week, this person gets up and you're going, I'm feeling tenser. Whenever this person talks, I feel like this. And then 3 weeks later, you discover that something was going on. And then it begins to make sense. Your tummy was warning you based on nonverbal cues. As part of this, you should build a vocabulary of emotional concepts. Keeping a day log lets you do this, and you can use that to analyze your feelings in later job situations or later jobs, so you can be alert for things coming at you. This will probably be something like, This feels like the time when I got overruled on the which versus that style. And this won't make any sense to anyone else, but you'll know exactly what that feeling is, even if why it's coming up right now makes no sense at the time. Again, with time, you will likely understand what was triggering that one feeling. Record everything that you do and everything you complete. And this is excellent material at salary time. You write it all down, no matter how trivial it seems. Like completed an FAQ for Phil over in sales, kind of a thing on this date. Always date this stuff. And at this job that I mentioned a couple of slides ago, I was asked to list my accomplishments for that salary review to justify a raise. So I went back and I pulled up my day log, which I think was about 30 pages by then. Just lots of random drivel that I wrote down about how I felt and what was going on, and occasionally even the occasional to-do note to myself, reminder, go do blah, and so I just ran through for the past year, and I culled 4 pages of major accomplishments and 3 pages of additional minor accomplishments. And so I took it into my boss and I kind of plopped it on his desk. And he said, I just wanted the stuff you've done. I said, this is the stuff I've done in the last year. Curse slam. And that's how you get a 7% raise. I have used this technique in other jobs to good effect similarly. Save copies of everything. Whenever you create something, keep copies. If get 3 copies of printed documents, 1 copy is for your portfolio and for taking apart and scanning for online samples, and the others are backup copies, which will get sealed in separate Ziploc bags that then are placed into a black plastic garbage bag, which then goes on into a box. And that box will then go into another black plastic garbage bag, and that goes into a box. And then you seal it up reasonably well, and then you put it on a high shelf. The reason for all of this sealing is that you want to keep the moisture away from this. You want it away from the sun, you want it away from everything, and you don't want it to possibly get flooded if your water heater breaks, which has happened to me. And because you want copies around. Also keep copies of all of the digital stuff. If you've got online documentations, burn 3, I said 3, CDs or DVDs and store them in the same way. You might consider archival quality CDs or DVDs because they are warranted for a lot longer time. Platters go bad. They are usually rated, I think, for only 5 years. And if you are in an environment, let's say you've got them in your attic or your garage where stuff like this tends to go, and the garage gets summer heat and hits triple digits, you can actually have them die on you. Fireproof safes. Side note: fireproof safes. We all of us that have fireproof safes keep, like our wills and insurance policies, and like my great aunt's wedding ring and things like that. And we have all of this stuff in there. And that when I'm working, I tend to keep my backup copies of stuff in there, platters that I burn and so forth. But it is important to remember that fireproof safe works by having a layer of water impregnated plaster in between the inner and outer shell. And when the fire hits it, the heat is drawn away from the exterior for usually about an hour. They're usually rated for an hour of 1,500 degree temperature or something, which means if the house burned down around them, it's like the insides won't burn, but the insides will have superheated steam, like probably about 230 degrees blown into the interior, and platters, and hard disk too for that matter, die at about 170 degrees. So fireproof safe alone will not do it. When I say copies, I'm not kidding. I mean copies. You will never be able to get copies 5 years later of anything. And a single CD of something might have a read error, or it might get scratched. You might be putting it into the putting it into the disk drive, accidentally, fumble it because the disk drive closed suddenly on you. I think we've all had that happen. It falls on the floor. And most of us have not had that happen. And then you go, oh, and you reach out to get it, you roll the office chair over it, and it just cracks the thing in pieces. It's like, if you've only got one copy, you are SOL at that point. So, as an example, one of my first manuals, one of the first manuals that I won an award on too, was the 1984 version of this particular company's tax preparation software. I've got it in my portfolio and so forth, but it's not like I haven't done stuff since then that completely subsumes the experience. But nonetheless, it's nice having this thing. The company put itself out of business in the late 80s, and would you like to bet that I may have literally the only remaining copies of this manual on the face of the planet? Most of the stuff we create has an incredibly limited shelf life, so keep lots of copies. Also, keep a list of your accomplishments. Keep a list of everything you've done. This is not quite the day log, but keep a list of everything you've done. I've got most of this, for example, on my Hedtke.com website under the projects and the bibliography and magazine articles sections. But every project or job you've had, the person you worked for, every article you published, every conference you attended, and every presentation you made. You use your copies and histories for building portfolios and resumes, online sample files, personal websites, and some places will ask for a chronological work history. And because I've done so much freelance work, I am close to, I think it's like 180 some clients at this point over the last 30 plus years. And then, all of the magazine articles, all of the bibliography, things like that. And so I can go, here's my chrono work history. And while nobody wants to read literally 17 pages of chrono work history, I have used this occasionally when writing cover letters for jobs. I go, let's see, what did I do? How did that, who did I do this for? Or when did I do this? Or what jobs can I list where I did something like what you're looking for? And I can say, well, I did this, and I did that, and I did the other thing, kind of thing. So that's very helpful. And something special. You're going to find this list very helpful when you are applying for your associate fellow status. One of the major areas of the AF application is listing the cool things you've done, where you've spoken, and things like that. When I applied for my AF in 2001, I went through my notes and I gleaned a dozen pages of accomplishments, about half of which I had completely forgotten. This included clients and projects and magazine articles and like bunches and bunches of speaking engagements I'd forgotten. You'll never remember, I promise, so write it down. Voltaire said, a good memory does not equal pale ink. And I think that's something we should all keep in mind. Read books and magazines in the profession. If you read one book a month in your profession for a whole year, at the end of the year you will have read a dozen books, and you will also be doing more for your continuing education than 95% of your peers. And by the end of the year, you might actually be ready for a promotion or a new job. The most successful technical communicators are constantly learning new tools and skills and disciplines. Throw in a couple of magazines, print or online, to stay current with trends and opinions, and you'll have the complete picture. But you should also read things completely outside your skill set and career focus. Not only is cross-disciplinary information valuable for solving problems, you may discover something new that you want to pursue full-time. All right, that's it for the career stuff. Let's talk people skills. These are the things, these are the things that will make dealing with other people better. First, dress for success. Dressing well can get you a lot of extra status and more money too. And at many contracts, I have been deferred to as if I'm an executive, simply because I wear starched dress shirts and have a great collection of ties. For men who may not be used to dressing snappy, and many of us aren't in this profession, interestingly. Costco actually has excellent 100% cotton men's dress shirts for maybe like $18 each, which is dirt cheap for a decent dress shirt. It is a game of symbols. It is okay to dress casually when you're working at home. Right now, I am wearing blue jeans and the rainbow suspenders that I like to wear. Not only do I like the color, but they keep my pants up. I'm one of those guys who, if he turned sideways and stuck out his tongue, he'd look like a zipper. And there is just nothing that I can do about my physique except maybe like butt cheek implants or something like that. Pants just fall off me. So suspenders work really nice. And I'm wearing this really awful 1980s style clubbing shirt. It is just so terrible, but it's very comfortable. I like cotton. What can I say? But dressing up for your client or your employer validates that you are worth whatever it is that you're paying you, and even more, particularly if it's a casual office. If you're having trouble to justify this to yourself, think of it, as I say, as a game of symbols. You are sneaking in past their conscious defenses with the symbols of what you're wearing, or to put it perhaps a better way, the Force gives me power over the untrained mind. Learn to be an extrovert. Lots and lots of technical communicators are introverts, and this is a field that goes well with introversion. Being alone, not interacting with people for hours, and all sorts of other things. You probably heard the one about how you tell an extroverted technical communicator they look at your shoes when they're talking to you. Unfortunately, being an introvert is not optimal for marketing yourself. You need to develop the ability to at least act like an extrovert. And now, this is not something that comes naturally to a lot of introverts, but it's good to be able to schmooze people. One of my favorite people in the STC is an introvert. She's developed an extroverted personality that she uses at conferences and with clients. I did not know myself that she was not an extrovert for 8 years. But she recharges like other introverts, which is she likes to curl up by herself with quiet and read and not interact with other people. Also, learn your communication style. As part of this, you need to learn your communication style to see how you're going to come off. Know your strengths and weaknesses, and this will help you communicate better with other people. You can consider like a Myers-Briggs test. One of the things that I've been doing a lot the last couple of years is called Global Bank. And you might go to bankcode, BANKCODE, bankcode.com, and it's one of a couple hundred personality assessment and prediction tools. But I've found that it works pretty well, and my business partner, Anna Parker, has gotten me into that. And you can do a quickie assessment right there and find out a little bit about yourself, and then find out a little more about bank. It's fairly cool. There are many other ways of doing this that you may like, but the point is you need to find out what your communication style is and how to make it work for you. If you're a bounding extrovert like me, you will discover that some people are going to feel threatened by your mere presence. And there's not a lot you can do but sit in a corner and be quiet. Yes, it'll drive you crazy. Interestingly, I found out about 20 years ago from a business coach, the fact that I am 6 feet tall actually can be threatening to some people who are much shorter. And so, you need to start to notice the signs of that and be able to deal with that kind of thing. If you're an introvert, you need to learn to present your ideas effectively and not get overridden by the noise from us bounding extroverts. Yes, you really are going to have to bribe people for info. You will have to bring in chocolate chip cookies sometimes. You've heard about bringing chocolate chip cookies in to get information out of the developers and SMEs. This is true more often than we like. Suck it up. I know you're a professional. You've got a master's in tech comm. You deserve respect. You've got years and years of experience in the field and blah, 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 blah. But that's just the way it is. I'm sorry. Get on with the realities. You may have great skills, but tech comm is not a field that usually pays you in respect. Remember that. If you went into this job thinking that you were going to be getting respect for your skills, you made a bad career choice. You need to readjust your desires and figure out how to get the respect that you're desiring from somewhere else, because it is not a coin that is usually paid out here, and you can starve waiting for it. Some people are going to cheat. They're the bad ones. There are not two kinds of people in the world. There are three. There are people who play fair. There are people who don't play fair, but they don't hide it. And then there are people who cheat. They pretend to play fair, but they don't. And they're the bad ones. They get you to trust them, and you'll then discover at some point you've been shafted. You have to go through the mill a few times before you develop radar for this type of person, and I guarantee you it's not going to be fun. So trust your tummy. If it feels tight for any reason at all, believe it. You may not know why. You probably won't know why at the time. But your tummy's going to be right, even if you don't want to believe what it's telling you. Also, use your day log. Your day log can help you identify what's happening in this kind of situation. It's like, as I was suggesting earlier, as you're writing down, I'm feeling kind of tense about so-and-so when he got up to speak at the meeting, and like that. And if you notice that there is tension happening, it is very likely that you're picking up nonverbal cues of some kind. And there's some fascinating neurology that goes on as part of this. I might suggest Dr. Deborah Tannen's "You Just Don't Understand" as an excellent book for learning a little more about this if you're interested, and also The Gentle Art of Verbal Self-Defense. Both of these will tell you a lot about this kind of behavior and picking up on some of this stuff, and communication styles as well, for that matter. All right, now we get to the really important stuff. These are the actual things that are going to matter to you for the rest of your life. And when I was writing this article, I frankly surprised myself with some of these, particularly this first one. Protect your hearing. I didn't expect this, but it's absolutely true. We work in surprisingly noisy environments. Computers and printers and some monitors even, and a lot of other stuff all have cooling fans. They make a disturbing amount of noise. It's white noise, and you don't notice it. You just kind of, oh, it's white noise, and you block it out. But your ears are getting battered daily by an incredible volume. You won't notice it from day to day, but the result of working next to all of this gear is you're going to suffer high-end hearing loss after 10 or 20 years. I used to have incredible ears. They were in the top 4% of hearing, and now I'm constantly saying what, and not being able to hear things at a normal volume from across the room, and it's really annoying. This happened to me. This is going to happen to you too, I guarantee. So you should wear noise-canceling headphones. Don't just wear regular headphones, because what you'll do is you'll crank the volume up to suppress the sound of the fans, and it's the same thing. You're just damaging yourself with whatever it is you're listening to, whether it's Chopin or something else, and you're still going to have too much noise going on. You could consider earplugs if you like silence and you don't like noise, or try and move the equipment with the fans as far away from you as possible, and put it, maybe put it behind the, if you're working at home, put it behind a closet door or something like that, or put it under a noise hood. They still make noise hoods. And as an example, go into your office. If you're working somewhere on site, do this at night after everybody's gone home. But go into your office, turn off all of the gear, and you're going to notice that we tune out an incredible amount of noise. But when you turn everything off, the silence is going to be deafening. Next thing, don't overwork. When you are young and immortal, you have what looks like a limitless amount of immortality, but you're going to use it up. So the temptation to work all night or pull down an extra contract in addition to your day job, this is great. After all, you can sleep on the weekends, you can make mountains of money, you can rack up experience faster than anyone else you know. I did this for a decade. I had a terrific time. I won a couple dozen awards from the STC. I published my first 15 books. That was in a decade. I wrote magazine articles. I worked impressive contracts and jobs. I garnered fame and some fortune. And at the end of that 10 years, from 1986 to 1996, after being chronically sleep deprived for a decade, I developed type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and a heart problem. My health is still pretty good, all things being equal, but I have a strict medical regimen that I have to follow. I have 11 different prescriptions I have to take. No matter what the accomplishments you may attain, being diabetic with a reduced life expectancy is simply not worth it. Let me put this another way. If I want ice cream, I have to plan for it. You don't ever want that to happen. So get enough sleep, get enough exercise, do not smoke. I just cannot tell you this firmly enough. Get 8 hours of sleep a night, eat reasonably well, exercise even if it's just taking a 20-minute walk every day, watch your weight, don't smoke. You're going to feel a whole lot better and you're going to have a much longer life expectancy than I do. Keep in touch with everyone you've liked. Life is best when you have lots and lots of old friends. Bring people forward with you from jobs. Usually when I'm working at a place, I will make a few new friends, but there are probably only, 3 or 4 people really that they're quality enough, if you will, to bring forward as like real friends. And there will be business contacts. Certainly keep in touch with them too, and people that you enjoyed working with, and that's good too. As a side note, right now there is a job that I am up for consideration on that I dearly want. It would be just such a step forward for me, and I would love this. Apart from the fact that it would be like probably about a $60,000 raise, and I could not argue with that. Moreover, this job is going to be fun, and I got wind of this because a writer that I had on a job 21 years ago, who I've kept in casual touch with, she's wonderful, pinged me a couple of months ago and said, the old director is retiring at the beginning of June, and I'd really like to work for you again. Well, damn, that's flattering. And I enjoyed her terrifically as an employee. And it turns out that a lot of people from the place that I had hired her are working at this company as well. So they have the world's slowest interviewing process, but they assure me I'm still under consideration for this. Fine. And I'd really like to go off and be a director of TechCom. Let me tell you, that could be great fun. But I got this because I had somebody that I'd kept in touch with from a job 21 years ago. Social media, of course, makes this a whole lot easier than it used to be. LinkedIn has just been purchased or is about to be purchased by Microsoft. I have no idea what effect that is going to have on it, but it's still a reasonable tool for everything that you'd want to do. And as part of this, you can end up marketing into this, even if it's only to extend your own brand as the be-all and end-all of technical communication. You can end up with a terrifically large fan base as well. But be prepared to lose some people along the way because you're not going to be able to hold on to everyone, and you may outgrow some people. God knows that happens. But don't dump someone because they're kind of inconvenient right at the moment if you actually like them. If your work life is so busy that you don't have time for some people, tell them that as graciously as you can. If they're friends, they will understand, and you can check in with them and pick up later. But don't dump them because it's more convenient right then. You'll regret this. I still regret having done this to somebody years and years ago, and it still pains me. So, next, be optimistic. Ask the right question. I am an optimist, as you probably noticed. I am an optimist of the, wow, my glass is 1/32 full type. I find opportunities where other people don't. And most of this is related to asking the right question. And I'll give you the key to this here and now. For example, when you say, I need to buy a new car, but I don't have enough money, you have painted a complete picture of reality. And unfortunately, there is no room for change. You've said, A, I need to buy a new car, but obstacle, B, I don't have enough money. Period. End of sentence. You might as well die right there. Change the but to an and. And so you're saying, I need to buy a new car, and I don't have enough money. And then you're including, you've changed this so your script includes both premises. So you're saying, I need to buy a new car, and I don't have enough money, which implies, therefore, I need to go find some other way of doing this, or get more money, or figure out if I can borrow a car, all sorts of other things. You can bring other ideas into the mix at that point. And that's most of what being an optimist is about, is learning to do that automatically. Look for the serendipity in your life. Give the magic a chance to happen. Also, don't be right, be happy. How many people do we know who are just insisting on being right? How many of us have a tendency to be jerks and try to be right about things? Little things. No, the comma should go there. Big things. Political opinions, God knows what, all sorts of things. But if we're busy being right, we are probably not going to be happy. And if we're busy being right, we are definitely going to alienate people and frequently be gloriously wrong on top of it. People who are right all the time are noted for not having a sense of humor about themselves. And this is not the kind of person you ever want to be. Being happy is always much better. All these tips boil down to one basic idea. It is always about fun and bucks. Everything in life is always going to be some combination of fun and bucks. There's fun and or bucks in pretty much everything. I cannot think of anything that we are likely to be doing that does not probably have fun or bucks in it. If you're having a tough time, and think of, how can I express this in terms of fun or bucks? You may have a job that you're hanging on to right now, and the job just sucks canal water, but you're doing it because you're getting paid and you don't have anything else, and you're figuring, okay, I'm sticking it out as long as I have to, kind of thing. If there is none of either, you may well be in the wrong place doing the wrong thing, and do what you can to get out of there. Yeah, some things in life are truly, truly, truly horrible, and there will be no fun. There will be no bucks, and you just have to grind through them. But at least you can be aware that that's what it is. Secondly, as part of this, it is never too late to start saving for your retirement. Everybody should go get a copy of The Richest Man in Babylon. That's the title. It was written in 1926 by George Clason, Clason. You can get this at the library. You can find PDFs online. Used print copies are available from Amazon and bookfinder.com and so forth for like maybe $5. It is wildly available. Read it. It's very readable. It's not like It's not like The Millionaire Next Door or something like that, which is actually not too bad for readability. But this is actually very readable, and as we step back as technical communicators, you might be really interested to observe the various writing styles that Clayson used to write this thing. Because he comes at it with several different approaches, and if you don't like one, you'll probably like the other. But read it. Do exactly what it says. It's not a lot of rules or strictures. There is, but the one thing I will say is no talking back. If as you're reading this, you disagree with the book, you're going, well, yes, but put it in the sock. You're wrong. The book's right. Shut up. Do it. It'll work too. As a result of this, I end up saving like $8-10 grand a year. Not too shabby, eh? That'll add up real quick.
Pretty good.
Buy a long-term disability policy. They are not too expensive when you're young, and even now at my advancing years, I could still get an additional disability insurance policy if I want. And here's a statistic. Back in 1999, I think it was, when I was running the Puget Sound Freelancers Association, an organization I founded that lasted for a number of years. I had a speaker in, Bajira Townsend, who was working for Equitable of Iowa. And she was talking about, and I had her in to talk about disability policies and insurance. And she gave a statistic at that time: 49% of all home foreclosures in the U.S. are the direct result of an underinsured liability. So when I was writing this speech, I said, well, is that true? So I went and I looked for it. No, that's not true. 60% of all home foreclosures today are the direct result of being underinsured. Let me give you an example. If you're a freelancer, or for that matter, if you're a captive, it really doesn't matter too much, and you're on the way to the store tonight, and some schmuck T-bones your car on the way home, and you can't work for 6 months, if you're a freelancer, you have no income stream. And if you're a captive, you may not have an income stream either. It really depends on who you're working for. You may be able to ultimately recover some of your losses if this person has insurance. And I had to do this in an accident that I had in 1993, but it's going to take you years. I think on that accident, I was able to show $200,000 worth of income loss. I ended up getting, I think it was 77,000, something like that, and a third of that went to the lawyers. So you have to have money to eat and pay your mortgage and survive in between. So getting a long-term disability policy, probably with like I talked to somebody about this once, go for a 2-month disability. That is to say, you have to show that you've been out of work and unable to work for 2 months. You can get them usually with like 1 month, 2 months, and 3 months delays. And I remember still that the insurance agent I was talking to said, to get a 3-month disability, you really pretty well have to be, bedridden and unlikely to be able to work again. 2 months is good. 1 month is okay, but you tend to pay a way too high a rate for that. I see Jamie Sagan said, if your company offers a match, do the max percentage. Absolutely, absolutely. The tricks in The Richest Man in Babylon will tell you how to pull money out that you can then use to match your company's matching percentages. And as part of this, buy life insurance too. If you die, your spouse and your family are going to need at least $100,000 and easily more to deal with sorting things out afterwards. There are widow/widower benefits from Social Security and the like, but like a settlement from an accident, those can take a while to kick in, and that's just kind of like, some money coming in every month. And that's good. I'm not sneezing at it, but it's not a pile of money, and you're going to need a pile of money. If your spouse dies on you suddenly, it's like, I don't know. If you are young, and by young I mean not 70, consider getting a $250,000 or a $500,000 whole life policy from a good company and use this as part of your retirement planning. Again, if you're in your 30s or 40s, it's not going to cost a ton for even $500,000 worth of coverage. And that idiot out there is still waiting for you to drive to the store so he can T-bone you. I decided recently, a couple of years ago, that I was underinsured. I only had like a $125,000 worth of policy for Maryland, and that I needed more money coming to her because when her previous husband died of lung cancer in 1998, he had a $100,000 policy, and she kind of used that up dealing with everything thereafter. So I went out and I bought a $300,000 term policy, and this is just me betting against the house that if they die, if I die, they're gonna cough up $300,000 from Maryland, and that's and the rest of it, she'll probably have about $500,000 cash if I croak. So she's probably going to kill me. Be aware of that. Given how good the desserts are that she makes, she's doing it slow, hidden way. But anyway, so I am only paying for this right now on a 10-year term, which will take me to when I'm 69. This is only costing me $3,000 a year, something like that. It's not that much, even with my health problems. As a youngster in your 30s or 40s, getting a $250,000 or $500,000 whole life policy is just not going to cost you a ton of money, and I recommend it. So, to summarize all of this, all of these ideas are going to make your life more prosperous, healthier, and a lot more fun. I would have had a hard time believing some of them when I was a wee sprat. But each of these ideas I told you about has improved my life immeasurably for the knowing of it, sometimes in a hard way, but nonetheless. All of these ideas will make your life better as well. I promise. Are there any questions? Thank you, by the way. It's kind of nice. I like
yeah, it's time for applause. Everybody reach up at the button and give John some applause there.
It's like, yes, show me the love.
All right. There you go.
All right, so, but are there questions? Because I would be delighted to answer questions. And I see Lucky is typing something. Thank you, Jamie. I like doing this presentation. I really do.
Yeah, this is great.
The part about making copies of everything surprised me. Can you elaborate on that need a bit more? Well, I'm not entirely sure. Yes, give me a little more direction. It seemed like a lot. What, keeping 3 copies of everything seemed like a lot? Yes. Well, let's see. I have, I'm thinking back to some of the old stuff that I've got. And I, in fact, have several copies of several of these things. One of them I have taken apart, physically taken apart to pull pages out of. And those pages go into my physical portfolio that I schlep around. Now, I don't do this as much as I might because, one, I've got a rotten looking portfolio. I've got great experience and I can peddle myself well, but nonetheless, it's like, it's always a good idea to have extra copies so that you have like a virginal copy, and that if one of these things got water damage, then I've got the other copies that are hiding in boxes elsewhere to go with. It doesn't even have to be water as such. It could be mildew, could be sun bleaching, all sorts of things. So And as I say, a lot of the stuff that I've written is for companies that simply don't exist anymore, and even if they existed, the chance of getting a manual from 1997 would be dim. So here, is it mainly for portfolio purposes? Well, mostly, but in fact, I have on a couple of occasions looked at manuals. I've said, how the heck did I explain that? To one manual that I wrote for my first tech writing job, I every so often would go back and I'd go, I had a sentence that described what a port is just perfectly, and I'd go back and I'd pull that sentence out every so often. We rarely do any of us need to talk about ports anymore, but in fact, you'll find a lot of examples. Here, and I'm scrolling up. So let's see, it seemed like a lot. And Trish Speyer says, what about saving stuff in the cloud? Yes, certainly, but also save it locally. What happens if the cloud, remember, is just a fancy name for a bunch of other computers somebody else is running. And that's good, but I have multiple backups. I have backups right now for stuff. I have DVDs mostly. I will have for transient stuff that I'm working on. I'll have thumb drives. And I do have a backup service to the cloud. But what happens if they go out of business, if the cloud goes out of business? And I also have hard disk drives, external drives that I'll do like a dump to for huge quantities of stuff, because I have 6 or 7 terabytes easily of stuff here. It accumulates, And I am planning on putting a RAID server in. But what happens, for example, if I have a fire? Everything's going to get toasted. What happened, so the cloud would be my backup. But what happens if I can't get to the cloud for whatever reason? What happens if I forget my darn password? It could happen. A lot of these things don't have password recovery. So all of a sudden I don't have anything. So I have multiple copies. I have copies offsite with my best friend who's an IT wonk, as it happens. He understands perfectly. And then I have stuff here. I have stuff on the cloud. You cannot have too many backups of this kind of thing. Let's see, scrolling down again. Given your experience with programming and coding, even though you hate it, do you advise a basic understanding? Yes, absolutely. It is a good idea. It couldn't hurt. Let's see. And you might find that you like it. I know many people in technical communications, and there seems to be sex-linked behavior on this. At least there was many years ago. A lot of technical communicators, got to play more and more with the code until they said, I want to go off and be a developer. Having been that route and gotten into technical communication as an outgrowth of that, I was inoculated. But there were people who just really got involved with the techno goodies feel of it all. So yeah, you might like it, and it does pay well. It pays better than what we do every day. Regarding day logs, is there any fear from a management perspective in your employees using this with you the way you've used it with others? Well, let's see. Where I have used it for salary logging and things like that, yes, I have people to do that on their salary reviews that work for me. Have I had anybody use this on me, saying, well, you said X and so forth? It's like, and the trick is, no, don't be a dick. Will Wheaton advice, don't be a dick. There are 2 rules I have as a manager, side note. One is I will always tell you the truth, or at least what I believe to be the truth. With the corollaries, I freely admit that I may be getting lied to myself, and if I find out that that's the case, I will apologize and say, I'm sorry, here's the truth as I now understand it. And the second corollary to that is I will not necessarily tell you all the truth. If somebody says, is there going to be a layoff soon? And I happen to know that there is going to be a layoff soon, but for obvious reasons, I cannot talk about that. I can say, I'm not able to talk about that, or I may say something that is very carefully phrased, and I promise you, what I tell you will be true. It might not actually be honest entirely. But I will tell you the truth, because as we all know, if you catch a boss lying to you, they are dead to you from then on. The second thing is never asking, excuse me, not never, I will avoid as much as I can asking people to do something unreasonable, with the corollary that sometimes things have to get done, in which case, if I've been overworking people because we had some stupid deadline and forced upon us, afterwards, the best thing I've found to give them, other than, kudos and recognition at their salary review, is to give them like unofficial time off. So if somebody says, well, where's Anita? And it's kind of like, she's working at home, and kind of like that, which gives you a chance to like catch up on your family and do your laundry and sleep late. So if you're like a decent human being, chances are your day log will not get used against you. And Beth, let me make sure I'm not missing anybody. No, what's the best way to get your first tech job with limited or no experience after graduating? And by the way, Lucky, Trisha, Ari, yes, you're welcome. Networking. Networking is really good. Internships while you are working on the gig are very good. God, somebody said something a couple of weeks ago about, they said, I read 50 Shades of Grey and I find it completely unbelievable. Imagine getting a job right out of college after you graduate. So, it's like, yes, I would say that the time to be looking for a job after you graduate is a year, maybe two, before you graduate, so that you start preparing your job opportunities before then. Start hanging out with people who might employ you. Get to know them. Do internships. Do informational interviews. Where you go in, you talk to the manager and say, I'd like to find out more about this because I'm getting a degree in TC and I want to find out, more about what the real field is like and how you all practice this here. And you can frequently make some very good contacts that way. Does that answer your question, Beth? Oh, good. Thank you. Other questions? Other questions that we have? No. You can always email me. Right now, I want to emphasize my response time is going to be rotten because I've had a complete system crash and I'm trying to recover and doing lots and lots of other things, and I will be on vacation in July. So, be persistent. Pester me if you don't hear back from me. Feel free to be persistent and email me like once a week or something or other, and just get up my nose and say, I heard you with this presentation and I have a question, damn it. So yes, and I see Teresa is typing something. We're all looking at you, Teresa.
The suspense is crazy. Oh yeah. She's also applauding. Yeah.
Oh, good. I've been sending resumes out since the contract I'm on is ending tomorrow. I've been sending resumes out, and about a month and a half ago, I sent one out, and I discovered that I had a typo in it. I'm going, Jesus God, oh no, oh no. So it's like, it happens, It's like always get somebody to do editing on this. I got an old friend who's a very good editor to run through both my resumes, because I've got a couple of different ones that I use depending if I'm applying for management or writing. My resumes and then my cover letter and the cover letter for my samples. I actually keep my samples. I have samples files online that you can download. The URL is in the resume. And so I made sure that all of that was like copacetic and like that. Would I ever recommend my own employees to watch this presentation? Of course I would. I want, it's like when I hire people, I, you know, I like to kid that I have a slaveholder attitude towards my contractors and vendors, and that's largely true. But nonetheless, when I am hiring employees, that I want them to be successful. I want them to feel good. I, with that my employees should be able to stand up and tell me at any given point when I say we're going to do X that I want them to be able to say, that's very interesting, but I think that you're full of shit again. and so most of them are quite capable of that, but I encourage them to feel comfortable in that, because it's like, I may be a god, but that doesn't mean I'm an infallible god. They're perfectly able to tell me something that I don't know. And so, yeah, I want my employees to watch this because they need to know that. What is the primary resource I use to find freelance work? This, networking, lots of networking. I sign up. I have daily announcements coming in from a bunch of different online job sources. The ones that I'm keenest on are like Beyond.com and Indeed.com, but there are other places. None of which, I'm sorry, are immediately coming to mind this second, but there are lots and lots of them that you can get. You'll start being able to filter. Oh, StartWire is something that I think I've not been nearly as impressed with that. But there's no reason you can't set up multiple searches for multiple types of jobs with multiple job boards. And you can, I get like probably 30 emails a day with these things. Oh, here's an interesting resume tip, by the way, that I just heard the other day. When you post your resumes, don't post a street address. Do post city and state and zip, but don't post a street address, because people suggested that having the street address and then your job history will lend itself to identity theft. Now, I don't know if that's true, but when was the last time that you actually got mail, snail mail, back in response to a gig that you had sent a resume to? Never. I don't remember getting something like that this century. So you can go ahead and say, here's my, I'm in such and such a location, and your objective will say I'm willing to travel or relocate, as the case may be, kind of a thing. And then if they want, they can look you up, but they'll have your phone number, they'll have your email, and life will be good. How are we on time? Not bad. We've got just a few more minutes.
Yeah. Got a lot of time.
Anything else? Distilled wisdom of the ancients, going cheap.
I have a question. Will you come back and give us another chat at another time? That would be awesome.
Sure. I can talk about all sorts of things. People might like, for example, the one that I've been fond of, which is captive versus freelance, making an informed decision. Thank you, Anne. I have fun with this. You can tell.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, John, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording that way.
Okay. Hang on. Beth is typing something.
Can you? Oh, okay.
Oh, no, it's just a compliment. Thank you.
Not just a compliment. It was a compliment, and a well-deserved one, too, for sure. All right.
Okay. I think we're clear on questions, but you can always ping me later, and we will, you can ask me personally. Thanks, Harry. I am pleased. So